So welcome to this, our first day of Enneagram panels at Commonweal. Today we'll be doing three types, the three types associated with the body center, sometimes called the gut center, types 8, 9, and 1. One of the things that I think is really interesting and unique about the Enneagram as a personality typology is that it is based in this idea that we as humans have not one, but three centers of intelligence. For instance, the MBTI, based on Jung's work, it's an excellent typology, one that many people benefit from and learn from. But interestingly, it focuses on cognitive functions. So one difference between the MBTI and the Enneagram is that even though we talk about thinkers and feelers in the MBTI, we're talking about cognitive functions. We're talking about the head level. When we're talking about the Enneagram, we're talking about three levels. We're talking about three centers of intelligence, three co-equal centers of intelligence. In the Western society, we tend to privilege the head, like in our education systems, in the way we've evolved in terms of thinking being a prominent mode. But what the Enneagram teaches us, which I think is so important, is that the head and the heart and the body are all organs of perception and all ways that we process information from the outside. And that by becoming more aware of all three, we actually become more alive and more awake. And that none of these three centers is more important or superior or inferior to the others. They're all very, very important in our functioning and especially in our awakening and our consciousness. So we start with the body-based types. In Gurdjieff's work, he called body-based types man number 1. So I like to start there. And each of the three body types is, again, centered in the body. It's a kind of center of physical intelligence, gut knowing, kinesthetic intelligence. And also these three types are in some way associated with the core emotion of anger. So the three core emotions of the three centers are anger, sadness, and fear. And these are the three core emotions of the human ego. And some people say, oh, they're negative. Well, this is the ego we're talking about here. Not that the ego is a bad thing. It's not. The personality of the ego is important. It's in some ways, in the Enneagram view, it's our teacher for understanding where we are and where we need to start from and what we need to understand about ourselves in order to grow beyond that. But the three centers, and especially the body center, is an important center to understand in terms of both what it means to be a body-centered person and how you approach the world more through experience than through thinking or emotion. And these three core emotions are very important because the character kind of gets shaped around the relationship to that emotion. So it doesn't mean body types walk around all the time being angry, not at all. It means that part of the way their patterns get organized and their personality is in some way related to the emotion of anger. And for each center, one type, there are three types in each center. One type tends to overdo that core emotion. One type tends to underdo it. And one type's kind of in the middle. And in the body center, 8s can tend to overdo anger only in that they have ready access to it. And sometimes they can overdo it. And part of their growth work is actually learning to feel it and use it in constructive ways. And I think 8s have many things to teach us all, especially me as a 2, about how to use anger in healthy ways. And also The nines tend to underdo it, and then the ones tend to be a little bit in conflict with it. They can usually, ones will relate to experiencing resentment and irritation. Some ones, especially if they're new to the system, say, I don't really consider myself angry. But learning about how their anger does manifest for all three is just an important part of the self-observation work and the growth path. So we have the benefit of having four eights here who have all been studying the Enneagram for a while and have all been observing themselves and their 8 patterns in terms of how they manifest in their daily life. So I'll be asking them some questions about how this operates from them, and I want to thank them again for the gift, really, of sharing their experience with us, because I really do think this is one of the most powerful ways around learning about the Enneagram types. And so I really, really appreciate all of you for being here today and for helping us understand this important type. Starting from the farthest away from me, I'm just going to start with introducing our panelists. We have Dawn, and we have Connie, and we have Jeanette, and we have Susanna. So thank you all for being here today. We'll talk about the type 8 generally first, and then we'll talk a little bit later about the subtype level. And that's an important level of the Enneagram. And the subtype is the idea, for those of you who may be new to it, that in addition to the 9 types, there are actually 3 versions of each type, according to which one of 3 basic human instincts, animal instincts that manifest in us humans, is dominant. And the 3 instincts are self-preservation, social instinct, and one-to-one instinct, sometimes also called sexual instinct. We have 2 people who have a social dominant instinct here today. We have 2 8s who have a sexual dominant instinct here today. We don't have a self-preservation 8 today, so that's unfortunate, but we have a very rich panel, and so I can talk a little bit about the self-preservation 8, and maybe some of our 8s here can, if they also relate to that a bit. But again, it's a slightly more advanced stage of learning the Enneagram is the subtype level, but it's also a really, really key component because it adds so much definition and nuance to how the type presents. So with that, I will open it up to our experts by just starting with a question for each of you, and we can start with Susanna, in terms of how you knew you were an 8 and how you see some of the type patterns of 8 showing up in your life.
You're so close. I'm not sure I like it. I like being close to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in the Enneagram studies for kind of like Michael for 4 years, although I'm sure I haven't done the 10,000 hours or even the 4,000 hours. But I first learned about the Enneagram at CIIS during a panel.
Which is a local school. It's an East-West school, California Institute of Integral Studies.
Right, thank you. And you were leading those panels, so that's how I first got in touch with it. And I was suddenly enamored because, well, we all know why. But if I think of my childhood, if I think back to my reactivity patterns, definitely when I was a child, I always thought that I was bigger than I was. And I thought I was very powerful, even when I was a 5-6-year-old. And I would get into these horrible fights with my dad, even though I loved him so much. But he was a very strong-minded, stern, big 8, and his idea was to dictate his way around the house, and I was supposed to not question it and just do it. And for me, it was always, I would always question his his word and his power, and I was attracted to the power, but I was also very upset when he wouldn't explain why we should do certain things.
You know, let me break in here. I love what you're saying. It's such a perfect description of the early experience of the 8. I realize I haven't said a lot of detail about introducing the type because I've kind of wanted to leave it to you all, but I will say a few things in that the type 8, the attention tends to go to strength, like you're saying, and eights often get the feedback from other people that they're intimidating. And oftentimes this is surprising to eights because eights are not intending to be intimidating at all. They're just being themselves. But they tend to have a big presence, a big energetic presence. And they tend to have gotten the message early in life that, the world is divided into the weak and the strong. And they sometimes have had a history where they had to grow up too soon or very quickly. They almost had to be stronger and bigger than they actually were as a child. So I love that you're starting there. And the attention sometimes goes to power. Who has it, and will they wield it fairly and justly? And so I think I love the way that you're starting with that. So what else can you tell us?
I remember also getting into, if my mom and my dad argued, I would always jump in to defend my mom, which is, I mean, who does that when you're like 6 or 7? And,
So there's a protective element
there
also.
was a big protective element, but there was always also a lack of respect toward my mom just for not standing up for herself. And so it was just conflicting emotions
Sort
around
of maybe
that.
seeing that she wasn't being strong enough and you had to be strong for her even at age 6.
Yes. And I also remember, I know I've shared this with you before, but I don't know anyone else here who knows this story, but when I was maybe 12, no, I was younger than that. I was probably 9 years old, and my little brother was about 3.5. There was an incident where I grew up in Italy, and my mom was running an errand at City Hall, and it was a very hilly street. So she parked the car, and we had a Fiat Panda at the time. Anyway, she put the handbrake on, or she thought she did, but it failed. It was probably not put all the way up, and she went for this errand, and I started feeling in the car while we were waiting that the car was actually going downhill. And it was very slow, but it was terrifying. And I didn't think, and I just got out of the car and started pushing the car to just stop it from going downhill, because it would have been a horrible accident. And my little brother was in the back of the car on his car seat, and was so little, and I didn't have enough time to basically pull him out. And but the sad thing is that I guess I really thought I was big enough to hold that car, and I did for a few minutes that felt like an eternity. And then finally she rushed out and saw it and ran to us and did what she had to do to stop the car. But
it's a beautiful example.
I was thinking last night, what should I talk about, because there are so many examples, but this will probably depict pretty much the power I thought I had. And it was a terrible experience in the moment. It's not like I didn't feel the fear, but
But you also brought this incredibly big energy, and this sense of yourself is really powerful even while you were a child.
Yeah, I mean, that caused almost a divorce right then and there, but it didn't happen right then. It lasted a few more years. So, yeah.
And it sounds like you were kind of a rebel too growing up. Yeah.
Well, I left when I was 18, moved to London. I just wanted to find out who I was. I felt very constricted in my home. And there was a lot of control going on my dad's side. So, yeah, I did it. I moved to London. I studied. I learned English. I started my way abroad, and now I'm here, been here for 14 years, I guess.
So kind of taking on a lot of challenge also at a young age.
Yeah, and it never felt like it.
It never
just
felt
like
hard.
An adventure. Let's just go see what's out there and make it happen. I like what you said about the gut center or the body center, because throughout my life and still now, even though I've been into self-awareness studies and mindfulness and trying to recenter myself, but even now I make my biggest decisions with my gut. Like, I don't really think about it very much. It's pretty instinctual.
Right, and eights move into action very quickly. Is that true for you?
Before I know it. I'm already there, so. Yeah.
Right, and that's, I think, a great way that eights body-centeredness shows up, is that there's a lot of moving into action very quickly. It's like acting before thinking. Is that what it feels like?
and oftentimes I don't regret it either.
Right.
It's just it's the right decision.
There's a
but
wisdom there.
somehow, yeah. And about what you said, I liked what you said about being perceived as angry. It's not at all what I feel about myself. There's an intensity. There's definitely a passion, and there's a will, but a lot of the time, especially in the past, I used to be perceived as angry or just upset, and it was just intensity, or I didn't know how to channel that energy.
So it doesn't
but-
necessarily feel like you're angry. It more feels like there's a lot of passion or intensity there.
Yes, like something needs to be done now.
Yes. Right. That's a perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Really clear. Jeanette, can you tell us a little bit about how you found yourself as an 8 and what are the main sort of type 8 aspects that you observe in yourself?
Well, I went to New Ventures West. Some of you may know it's a coaching school, and they went around the room and they said, "You're an 8. Read the book." And I read the book, and it was like a mirror for me because all my life I've been told I'm intimidating, and all my performance appraisals were smile more. Why? Why do you need to smile? I'm a nice person. And I would introduce myself to my direct reports about, at first you may be intimidated by me, but once you get to know me, you'll really like me. So give me a chance. And because they would really be scared, because I think one of the things for the 8th is we see ourselves as truth tellers. Truth tellers. We're very direct. And if you ask me for something, I'm always going to tell you what I like about it and maybe what could be better. Because that's just our way. Like, yeah, that was really good, but like if we would have made it green, I think it would have been better. And what I've learned through all my life was, people don't necessarily always get constructive feedback and positive feedback because part of a fabric of a conversation. If you're having a specific performance or a feedback conversation, then it's a little bit different. But that's just the way I talk to everybody. I talk to my kids. I talk to my husband. So I was an adult, obviously, and pretty mature when I read it, and it looked a lot like me. We'll talk maybe a little bit later about the subtypes. There's some things that I saw were very different about me that I thought, well, maybe I'm a 4, because I'm I'm a sexual subtype, so I'm very emotional. I think 8s are emotional, but I didn't see that they were as emotional as I was. And the anger was amped up by 5. So anger was always part of my nature. That was the way, 8s are super sensitive. They talk about it with the marshmallow, like a marshmallow heart with barbed wire around it. And that's really true because most of the time when I would get angry is I felt like someone was not respecting me or didn't like me, or why am I the one who always have to do the tough things because I'm the one who's brave enough or strong enough to go out and tell people what's going on. I mean, one example is I went to Catholic schools all my life, and I was in an all-girl Catholic high school, and I'm on student council and decide we're going to do something around abortion rights, which was not, the nuns didn't really challenge, they didn't cherish that, but that was a fight, so let's fight, let's rebel, let's, go against the power, and come behind me because I'm going to protect you. I'm strong enough to have the fight with the nun. My parents didn't love that so much because when they got called, like you didn't argue with a nun or a priest if you're Catholic, right? But I would, because I felt that was my duty to do it for others who really couldn't do it or didn't want to do it or really affected or would cry or be very upset if someone was upset with them. I think one of the other misnomers about the 8 is, we like challenge. So in some ways, you like the challenge. Conflict. I don't like conflict, but I'd rather be in conflict than avoid conflict. Because to me, it feels disingenuous. Mm-hmm. So if something's happening in the room and no one's going to say it, then it just has to be said, right? That's how I feel. Maybe it doesn't, but I feel like it's got to be said.
It's like being direct and being a truth teller.
Right. Yeah. And so a lot of times 8 are in conflict. Or they're the ones who are in a situation where conflict's there. And that is not something you seek, but it's not something you're uncomfortable with. Challenges, the other thing that I read about the 8s, and of course I know a lot more about it now, is I want to make something big happen. If you want me to do something that's incremental, I'm not really interested in that. So and the harder, the better, because we're going to figure it out. So for the 8, I think the 8 will go into something that's very difficult and doesn't need to know how to do it. They'll figure it out. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Because we'll find a way, because that's how you do anything difficult. The opportunity for the 8 in that is the certainty, and maybe that's why I'm actually writing an essay, an application, and it says, how did you know you're an 8? I'm like, oh, I know I'm an 8, and because I'm certain, because with a question mark, with a little smiley face, because 8s are certain.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, don't tell us. And, one of the reasons I feel like we're really certain is because our guts serve us really well. So, but the opportunity for the 8 is when they get so certain is, of course, you're not always right. A lot of times you have some intellectual intuition, and it does serve us super well, but then you get real certain. And then certainty and this impulsiveness, and again, it may be amped up more because of the sexual subtype, I don't know, but I'm very, very impulsive. And the lust, right? To me, if I see something I like, well, I'll buy 2 of them. Why not buy a pink and a green one? I mean, you can always have more. But if I find, like, if I'm grounding myself, if I wait even a half hour, I mean, online shopping's really not very good for an 8 or probably for anyone. Because you're like, But I mean, like, if I can walk away from it, then I kind of don't want it so much anymore. It's just like, I got to have it right now.
Kind of the taking action and the impulsiveness.
Right.
And lust is the passion of type 8. Right. It's kind of like expansion of things, wanting more of what feels good.
Wanting more.
Yeah.
So if you can, it's the impulse. Here's an example. So we were living in Switzerland for about 18 months, and we came home for the holidays. We came home from November through December. And we were starting to think about coming back, and we sold one car. We had the other car, and it was an Audi that was getting repossessed. But they were taking it back, right, because of the engines. We had a diesel Audi. And they said, you're not going to be able to drive this, and Audi's going to buy it back. So we knew that we had to get rid of that car. So my husband and I start looking around for cars. And we find this deal on this car, and I want it. And he's like, well, we'll come and buy it. We'll buy it when we come back, because we're not coming back to June. This is November. Not coming back. Why have something sitting in the garage? Well, maybe I come back, I'm for work, and I could drive it. And he's like, no. So I get home, and I'm, so I know how to control, right? Because I'm always in control, and I know how to control others. Because, again, a fear for an 8 is being out of control. Like someone else is controlling me. Like when someone told me 8s need control, I'm like, that's not true. Until it was flipped, like, what if someone could control you? Well, no, absolutely not. That would be horrible. So by nature of that, I try to control everything, right? So I'm really upset with him. And, you're kind of really smart about how to argue with people. I'm like, I'm a woman. It's my car. I work. Why can't I have that car? And the next day, the car's in the driveway with a big bow on it because it worked, right? And now, when we're paying the car payment in January, I'm like, why did we buy that car? We're buying this, we're not even driving it for 6 months. And my husband's looking at me like, you gotta be kidding me. So, and he's an SP, which means he's very careful with things. So
He's self-preservation, yeah.
This is kind of I think the orientation for 8s. There's kind of for my friends, I think there's a love affair and a hate somehow. There's a tolerance. Again, I have a lot of self-preservation friends, and sometimes it's just too much. This energy, and the sexual, which means I want to possess. A sexual 8 wants to possess. So I don't want you to only know me. Like if I pick you out of a crowd, you need to love me. I'm going to be the best person in your life. You're just going to be mine, and that's a lot. Mm-hmm. And so we get really close to people, and people get really close to us because I think an 8, and you'll talk about the 2, where the 2 knows how to please people, but I think the 8 knows a little deeper understanding about what you specifically want, particularly the one-on-one, and how to connect with you in a very, very meaningful way. Mm-hmm. Because 8s can be super generous. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one of I think this misnomer of eights are hard. They are to a point where they have to be strong, but they're also they could be very kind.
Yes,
And
there's
they
a
could be
soft
very
interior,
generous.
like you said,
Yeah.
a lot of sensitivity underneath sort of what can look like from the outside a tough exterior.
Right. Well, until you get to
get to know the person.
something that I feel I absolutely, I have a really good friend who's a 2, and we're having this group, and she's the leader, and I'm like, I was always the leader, That's not okay, and I had this really reaction to it. I mean, I'm still kind of reacting to it, like, I'm so happy for her, but I'm really not, because why am I not leading that group,
It's hard. Yeah.
So you really have to, so it was an interesting, I'm still trying to process that, like, it feels so selfish. It feels so horrible to me to feel that way, but there's something about, like, I'm supposed to be in charge.
Wow,
And if I'm not in charge, what am I worth?
that's really
Right?
clear.
That's my worth.
Yeah, that's your power is
Yeah.
so much of your value.
So power was always important to me. And when I lost it, like when I left the corporate world and I lost it, I'm like, now why do people want to interact with me?
yeah,
I can't give them something. I can't give them a contract. That's how I met B. I can't give her a contract anymore. Why is she gonna even want to talk to me anymore? So there's a bunch of vulnerability under there. They're truly vulnerable, and I think 8s show their vulnerability to a point.
yeah, right.
And I guess, I can only speak for myself. There's a certain point for me where, it gets shut down.
Yeah, and I think the whole 8 personality and the focus on strength can be sort of an overcompensation for not wanting to be in touch with vulnerability or not wanting to show it. Yeah.
Because the fear, for the 8 is abandonment or betrayal or something like that. And I mean, I think I was telling B one time, and even my husband, it's like, well, I can't truly give it. What if, well, he's like, I would never be unfaithful to you, but you could die. You can't control that, or
Have you thought of that?
where would I be? Like if I got truly dependent,
Yeah.
what would happen to me? So I
Yeah.
have to be able to take care of myself in
Yeah.
a way that's very contained.
Yeah.
And you can push those edges, and that's kind of our lifelong work.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get more into the challenge and the growth, but I think that's a perfect introduction to there's that vulnerability inside, but and then there's the protectiveness around it that we often see, but we may not see the sensitivity or the vulnerability, especially at first. Yeah, thank you. Connie, so what's been your journey to 8 and how do you see it in your life?
Yeah, something I've been realizing in the past couple of years is I have this physical feeling that's even overwhelming to me. It's almost like a fountain of energy that never dies, keeps coming out from my chest. It rises about here and it never goes away. It is exhausting. And there's nothing I can, I literally, if this room was cleared out, I could run around. If there was any kind of like a notch in the wall or something, I'd be climbing the walls, running around. If there was less books there, maybe climbing the bookshelf and just running all over the place. And so I agree with so much of what was said before, and I wanted to make some comments in my own particular life. So I want things big. So a manager once asked me, well, what would excite you? Like, you're doing so well in role. What's your next level? I say, tell me that something can't be done. And if there's a challenge that the organization, I work for a large company, has not been able to solve, and I will figure it out. I have complete confidence that I could figure out anything. It's not conceit. And we'll talk about subtype before because I'm very highly team-oriented and I want to be in packs of people all the time.
The social subtype dominant?
Yeah, social subtype with a lot of self-pres. Hence the fact that there's fire extinguishers mounted in every room in my house. And my family thinks I'm nuts. Not like that, but they're commercial. Great.
Not the little ones.
No, they have to be big because I'm an 8. And speaking of, and this is just coincidental, is I have 8 dogs. and we have a housekeeper, and that's where all my money goes. But my son and my wife are nines, and I absolutely, my best friends are nine. I have friends of all different types. But I didn't feel like there was enough energy in the house. And although I love animals so much, I'm active in dog rescue. And by the way, 6 of the 8 are pit bull breeds. So, and that I still could always think about, gee, if there was more square footage, and by the way, pit bulls are wonderful dogs, but if there was more square footage, or if it wasn't that literally there's something knocking into my knees all the time, that I would see, gee, is there more energy that could be in this space? Because I just love that vitality. We have one of our largest dog is this big. He's a brindle pit. He stands like this, and he's so squishy. He still wants me to pick him up and carry him everywhere. So he does 2 things for me. One thing is that I just dote on him because he's this big guy. We call him the alpha chicken, and I carried him everywhere when he was a puppy, so because he was so cute. And now he wants me to carry him everywhere, and he's 115 pounds. And so I love that. And then also that being around that powerful muscular physique is very soothing for me. And being able to, if I also had my way, and don't worry, I'm not going to do this to anybody, but I love jostling people. It would devastate me if I ever physically hurt anybody. But I would love to grab everybody in the room and just like hold you and squeeze you, and I very much interested in inappropriate contact, but very much I want to like grab things. I want to run in things. I want to I want to talk at the top of my lungs. Everything is that. So the fountain of energy is very hard. And if there's any way I describe life as an 8, it's teddy bear and combat boots. So I love deeply. I love my employees. I love my family. I'm obsessed with my friends. And if anyone was to cut in front of an elderly person at Safeway, they probably have a broken neck in 2 seconds. I'd say, you can't do that. Don't do that. Like, or what are you doing? Like, I can jump right away into, I'm free-spirited, but I'm not like random in my behavior. But I would absolutely, if something is not right, not fair to somebody, especially a child, animal, or an elderly person, that's it. In fact, if I'm in Target and there's a child being scolded, I will duck behind a aisle and just watch and make sure the child is not going to be hurt, or and I will absolutely speak up. Absolutely. Just the same as a child. I was in some furniture store and the kids were bouncing up and down on the furniture, and I just went over. I said, "Knock it off and sit down." And they're not my kids, but I was like, this is not right behavior. It's not right. And I always say that I have the triple crown. So I'm an Enneagram 8. I grew up in New York City, and I was born in the Bronx. So my destiny was at some point to like break somebody's kneecaps, I guess. But I have no plans for that. Don't worry. But I was there when the 2 things stick out in my mind, where Susanna was talking about childhood memories, and as was Jeanette. And my brother was born under a mixed star, and which meant he would be either like the luckiest kid in the world, or things would be, and it was like really tiresome. He was an older brother, close to 4 years of age. And at the age of 7, he was going through the spurt in which things weren't working out for him socially, and he was being picked on, and that enraged me. I also felt the burden of, oh my God, I have an older brother. I want somebody to take care of me, and now I got to take care of him for the rest of his life. I just kind of foresaw it. But anyhow, I managed to create a booby trap, like actually engineer one, in which I lured these kids. And we're talking about boys that are 11 or 12, and they absolutely fell into it.
And how old were you?
I think I was 7.
Wow.
And they felt, and then I had said to them, I said, don't ever bother him again. And I felt totally, I felt comfortable, I felt calm about it. But but it would really devastate me if I ever hurt anybody's feelings. I'm like really upset about it. If physically I ever hurt anybody, it would really bother me. Like I have no intention towards that. But if somebody transgresses or breaks like a code of of rudeness, lack of social grace,
They're
when they
hurting
should
other
know better,
people or
hurting
imposing
other
on other
people,
people.
then I'm absolutely, it's like a pilot light of, and that's another sensation of like, and then it comes and goes. So if you imagine like stormy weather, my experience, and it really startles my wife. She's like, oh my God. She's like, how could you come across that way? I'm like, oh, I'm done. Like, I'm fine. Everything's great. So my frustration comes in a spurt, and then it's like a clearing. It's like
It's gone. It
it's
comes and it
totally
goes. You don't
gone.
hold on to it.
So yeah, I don't hold on to it. So even though I have this fountain of energy that's never ending, with frustration or anger, once it's expressed, it's way gone, and I've moved on, and it's clear. And I hold what's interesting, sometimes I see the word vengeful and aid, and that doesn't resonate with me at all, because it's done. Like I have a couple of relatives that didn't handle some things well, and they said really rough things. And my friend's like, oh my God, you're talking to them, you're visiting them. I'm like, well, number one, they're elderly. Of course I'm going to. And number two, well, so what? So that's their own weakness as a person, and I'm stronger than that. So I move on. I can move on, and I don't hold grudges. The other thing that I find that I do almost every Sunday is I work with horses. And I find that very comforting. And when my instructor said to me, I'm also learning to ride at better and better levels, said to me, what would you like? And I looked around the barn, and there was the Clydesdale mix. And I wanted this giant creature. And I was like, of course I can, even though I'm just learning like Western reining. I'll be able to handle that. And so I have speaking of, Jeanette used a great word, certainty. I have a certainty that I can handle anything, and that everybody around me will be taken care of fine. And where that came in is I was right by, I worked a few blocks away from the Twin Towers at 9/11. And I was the manager on duty at the time, and it was very early in the morning, and an employee came in. She was upset, and she's like, I just saw a plane crash. And rarely, but sometimes, there was one thing a few years ago in New York that a small plane went into a high rise, and a pilot had a heart attack or something like that. So I thought it was very upsetting, but I thought that was something like that. And then it started not to add up. And then I realized this is a major deal. I could hear a lot, and then the plume of smoke, maybe about halfway up in the sides of the room, started coming through, and dust, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I immediately, with complete confidence, not a moment's hesitation, I knew how to organize my employees. People started coming in to the storefront. I was a HR manager, district HR manager of a large retailer. Came up to the storefront, and I mean, you can tell people were male or female in some cases. They're so clouded with dust and cut up. I immediately knew how to organize them, how to relax them, how to organize my employees, and how to manage the whole scene. We had maybe about 20 people that came in. And I just knew how to do it. I had some employees that said, okay, you're going to be in charge of clothing. And some people had clothes, most people had clothes on. If anyone has abrasions or cuts, you're in charge of first aid. And we had one phone that was working, and I managed the phone line. And I just knew with certainty that was, and I had our security guard go to the store as soon as I knew something was happening around the corner, and get as many provisions as possible. So I immediately knew with certainty that I would be able to handle this.
It's that kind of gut knowing, that kind of moving into action,
Yeah.
that kind of, like you're saying, sort of almost like just clarity that comes from in you, and no hesitation, and a kind of fearlessness. Oh, and eights are also very good at creating order from disorder.
Yes.
Like you said, that's part of meeting a big challenge, like creating order, finding a way to help people through creating order.
What really drains me as an eight, so some no-nos, are complaining. If anyone, I will think very, very murderous thoughts. No, I'm only kidding. If anyone complaining, so if somebody says they don't know how to do something, I have all the time in the world, and I feel tremendous tenderness and kindness, and I really want to help. I really want to help people, and if somebody could know better and they're negligent, oh boy, that's like not good. Or if somebody just complains and they don't have, if somebody says I'm lost, I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed, but if they're overwhelmed and they really don't care and it's somebody else's monkey to carry on their back, that's really bad. I don't like that at all. So that's not a thing that you should ever do with an 8, is just complain or just say, can you help me, is a really great thing for an 8 to hear, but something about, the other complaining is not good.
And there may be a social subtype aspect for that to you too. It's like you're not helping the team if you're just complaining and not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then lastly, and then I'll turn over the mic, is the other thing is talking in possibilities and talking about making big things happen, and having vitality is really important to me. Like, so I took my friends and family on this camping trip, and I got us 3 campsites because I wanted to make sure we had plenty of space. So having this big space is important, and I got all the food set up, and then I had this idea. Wow, let's make this whole weekend into the fact that we have a pirate colony. And I actually got like pirate flags, and I got everybody this pirate, and I got this treasure that I scattered all over the place. So it couldn't be just like that we're going camping and we're gonna freeze for a couple of nights and, have some like hot dogs in the woods. But I made it into this whole like adventure and this mystery thing in which we're gonna be pirates that were marooned, and how could we survive the weekend. So thankfully people in my life play along with me. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we don't
very,
bite.
Very clear. Thank you, Connie.
All right, bye.
Thank you, Connie. So Dawn, how did you see yourself as an 8, and how do you see these kinds of patterns showing up for you?
Well, I certainly recognize the 8-ness in myself of all the other 8's observations. But at first I thought I was a 7. Or at first I thought, this doesn't even make sense. I can't answer those questions. You're forcing me to make a false choice, and it's a bunch of baloney. But my wife focused, when my son came over one time, on his 4-ness. And he sat there with his jaw dropping and admitted that no one had ever nailed me like that before. and suddenly I could understand him and his motivations, and the light went on, and like, oh, there must be something here. So I volunteered to sit on a panel as a 7, but just because I thought it was a 7. It was I'm pretty energetic. I do a lot of stuff. So, but Polly Turner wanted to confirm, and rapidly concluded that I was not a 7, and partly with regard to limitation. 7s don't want to be limited, and I have no problem. Limitation defines things. Everything is defined by its limitation. And I pounded the wall and said, see, here's a wall. This is, and after that, I began to look into 8 and say, oh yeah, definitely I'm an 8. I delved into it not on my own. My wife is very interested in the Enneagram.
She helped you see the 8 in you.
Well, she helped me get interested in the Enneagram. She didn't really. If she did lead me, she did it in a very subtle way, which is she uses that kind of skill.
Yes. So what finally convinced you that you?
Well, I looked at it.
Was clarifying.
Just everything. When I really looked at the description of the 8, for instance, okay, let's start with childhood. I had a nickname in, I guess, fifth grade, Mighty Mouse. Now I'm 5'4". I was the tiniest. I was smaller than all but a few of the girls throughout my grade in high school, but I didn't think of myself as I don't think of myself as small or weak or I'm and I'm not. I'm very strong. And it's not just a physical strength. I have physical strength, but I also have kind of an inner strength. So strength is part of it. Leadership is part of it. I'm find myself in positions of leadership. I'm perfectly okay with others leading if they're doing a good job. If they're not doing a good job, I might step in and take over. It's possible. So I'm, as an aide, I'm interested in justice, that things be fairness. Big in my natal family is fair. I have two brothers, and fairness is very important.
How do you relate to the anger piece?
So anger arises in me quickly and passes through equally quickly. I mean, it's a matter of seconds typically. No more than less than a minute. And it's gone. I mean, there's nothing, no relictual resentment or anything like that. It's just, let's see, vengeance is attributed to eights, and I, like you, could not relate to that. But when another Enneagram
Speak to that.
class person told me, yeah, but what about Schadenfreude? I said, what's Schadenfreude? Well, it's the gloating over the demise of one's enemies or what. I said, oh, yeah.
There is that.
There is that.
Yeah.
There is that. So, other 8 characteristics. Cue me, I'll tell you.
What about when other people try to control you? Kind of like what Jeanette was mentioning.
It's just really not very possible.
And I love the way you say that, because some people might look at you and go, he's kind of soft. There's something really sweet about you. And yet there's also this strength. And I
Go
think,
ahead and try it. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I don't really, seriously, I don't really feel like I am I controllable, my wife? Suddenly, she's good, yes.
Yes.
Okay, if someone can do it, she can do it.
Yes. But it's not easy. That's the main point.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd love to hear you each talk, maybe briefly, about what you see some of the strengths and gifts of being an 8, and also what are some of the challenges, especially the growth challenges or the blind spots. Do you want to start?
Yeah, blind spots, vulnerability. So I'm into power and strength, and being strong, and so where does that leave vulnerability? Right? That's not a comfortable place. That's not. It's a contradiction of. I mean, vulnerability looks like weakness to me. It is weakness, isn't it? I mean, so that's one thing.
What about a particular strength? What about a particular strength or gift that comes from
Well, sure. I mean, strength itself. I mean,
strength itself? Yes, that's like in when I was written about 8s, I've said their superpower is superpower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I haven't ever been. I've never felt stopped. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it's hard to think at times I've
Got a forceful, big energy.
Yeah, I've traveled around the world 3 times and, climbed mountains in the snow and with chains for crampons and that kind of thing. It's
Kind of taking on a big challenge and being able to meet it.
yeah. They say about AIDS, and I see it's true. Often wrong, but never uncertain.
That's great. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Connie. Any strengths, but also in particular growth challenges, things that have helped you see about yourself that have helped you grow.
So I'd say some strengths are competence, and we view things, at least I can speak for myself, is somebody competent or are they not competent, with competent being absolutely A+ wonderful in our book. Really, what I want to share with everybody, and ironically, vulnerability is really hard, but I am going to be vulnerable. Let's see how it goes. But I have a mortal wounding all the time. And that's because I really feel like there's a probability of rejection because I have so much, and it's not me myself as Connie, it's just being an 8. It's really hard. It's really hard that no matter what, I mean, if I'm sleeping, one time I was sleeping and my wife said, "You're riling all the dogs up." I'm like, I'm sleeping. Like I was napping. My body wasn't moving. But there's just like this energy. And I always think like, people either, we could be an acquired taste. And that's really hurtful, especially based on my subtype being social. I have tons of friends. I want to even have more friends. And that's usually important to me. And that's really tough. And then one said like, 8s don't want to be alone. We just want to be left alone. And that's a really important distinction. We really do want other people in our lives. People are important. Their feelings are important. But our energy is so strong, it just kind of overrides a lot of things. And it's really hard for me, too, I have a bit of rebellion about, so what? So I have big energy. Like, deal with it, everybody. So what? Like, why should I feel bad about it? It's not like I'm doing it, like, to inflict something on somebody. So it's really hard to be an 8. And it's hard to know that people are kind of trying to get used to you when all you have is the interest in having friends and making things work for other people and having other people's best interests in mind. That's really, really tough. And that's really, there was a job posting I wasn't interested in, and I was talking to a colleague about it. And she said it was for a new boss. It was like a senior director or something in my department. And I said, well, what do you think? She goes, oh, God, whatever it is, I just don't want an 8 as a manager. And then she's like, wait, you're an 8, and I really like you. But I was like, yeah. I was like, and you just spun me for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be really upset. So,
Yes, 8s sometimes, and I think part of what you're saying is there's good parts and difficult parts to having so much energy and having this big presence.
Right.
A lot of good stuff, like all you've done for the world and for dogs and for the way that you come in and protect people, and yet they're, like you're saying, their people respond to that energy in different ways. And sometimes 8s don't always know their impact, but also I think you point out something really important is sometimes because 8s seem so strong, they actually get bullied by other people. Other people sort of think that they don't have sensitivity, that they can't be hurt, or they don't understand, that what's going on, and can be, I think, kind of harsh with 8s. And so I like that you gave that example because I think that's something really, really important for us to know. And
or
that
people want to
happens.
exclude us because the energy is just too much at the time for them to manage.
Right, and certainly part of it is everyone understanding each other more and being compassionate, but also it sounds like there, let me know what you think of this, there's a growth challenge for the 8 to sometimes contain the big energy. Not that it's bad in any way, but that sometimes, again, all of us are sort of it's almost like moderating your impact more consciously, without, again, making yourself wrong or bad for having that beautiful big energy. And oftentimes that big energy has a lot of heart in it.
It does.
8s have huge hearts. And so a lot of that big energy is like you're saying, I want to help people, I want to do challenging things to support people. But I love that you're pointing to some of these real challenges of how people can react to you, and the vulnerability that's underneath there that sometimes people can't see but is right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeanette, can you say something about, again, any strengths, but especially the growth challenges of being an 8?
So I think the strength is, you could be a real catalyst for an action, for any kind of change or action. Again, we talked about, I don't see that as a challenge. And I think I'll speak professionally. Professionally, it worked really well for me because eights, I think, are real politically savvy. They have power, they know where the power is, they know how to make relationships with the people in power, and they know how to get stuff done. And I think you do it in relationship. I would never be close to a leader that I didn't think was ethical. But I'm okay with, as long as, maybe they're not as skilled as they need to be, because I'm going to get stuff done in the greater good or whatever. And you get hard stuff done through the power structure, right? So I think you could do that well. I think that could become a gift. I think for me, and the weakness, so vengeance doesn't sound foreign to me. I think it's really part of an 8. Because I think the anger for me, anger has been a part of my life. And I agree with what they say. I get really angry and then it's gone, but it's not gone for the person I'm angry with. This is the issue. Because when I'm angry, you know it, right? And most of the time, I'm unleashing that anger on somebody who may not be able to just walk away and say, oh, okay. Because then 15 minutes later, I feel fine. There's anger, and then you just gotta walk away, but 8s can get really, really angry. And then there's a lot of residual around that anger, particularly as a parent. My kids are grown now, but I'm doing a lot of healing with them around this unleashing of anger. And then I'm okay, but they're really not, right? So this can be very, very destructive. So that's something, and even now I get angry all the time. It's easy for me to get angry. I've learned how to, I'm better at when do I need to really articulate that. Because what happens with 8 and anger sometimes, you get, again, 8s can be pretty savvy, is that I can get really rational and give you all the reasons why I'm angry. That makes perfect sense. But you're being reprimanded and disciplined and dismissed, right? So there's this coldness that comes over 8s when they control their anger. And nobody's fooled by it. So that, I think, is the growth pattern about how can you... I'm angry because I'm hurt. And what someone said to me with this, I'm not going to get into a lot of, but there's a scramble for the 8 where when they get angry, they can go to 5 and get real rational, right? And then they get triggered again, and then they get really rational. So it's a cycle, and the person doesn't even know what's coming at them. And what they said is, what did you do with the 2? Because I was feeling that way because I was so scared. I had this conversation with my son. I was so scared that he was going to make a big life decision that were going to have a lot of consequences for him, and not good ones. And I couldn't say, she said, did you say, I'm so worried, that's why I'm so triggered? I'm like, of course not. I'm in my, I wanted to be the strong, rational person. So that's the opportunity to say, I'm so angry because I feel so hurt.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful example of how for 8s and personality, it's like the vulnerability is just not in the picture of their when in the moment, especially like you're saying, under these heated circumstances. And so it's like the anger comes out, but the hurt and the worry doesn't get expressed. And so we don't know that that's part of the picture. So for the growth path for 8s is putting that in the picture, putting that in what you communicate. It's like, I'm angry because you hurt me,
Right.
And that's often the vulnerable part. In some 8s, I think, that haven't done very much work, that part can be very unconscious and completely denied. Like, I'm not vulnerable. We're hearing from people who've been doing a lot of growth work who can speak to the fact that, yes, I'm angry because I'm hurt and I'm vulnerable. But even the people working on themselves, sometimes there are moments when that doesn't get put in the picture. And then, like you're saying, on the other side, the person is like, wow, you're really angry, but they don't know the whole story. And so the growth path is you filling in that whole story of what the vulnerable part is for you.
Yeah, and I think the other learning, and then B, that I had recently was, this is why sometimes I thought, I knew I wasn't a 4, but I felt very connected to the one-on-one 4, or the sexual 4. A lot of times I feel like a victim, like, why do I have to do it, you know? And I was talking to Nancy the other day, a coach, an Enneagram coach, and she was like, oh no, 8s feel like a victim. Like, why does it always have to be me? Why am I the one who has to get angry? Why am I the one that has to take care of it? I'm just sleeping, you know? Everything,
right.
you know, like, you know, my
Yes.
kids are still, they're talking about 10 years. I'm like, what the heck is that about, you know?
Yes.
So sometimes I feel like a victim, and I guess to get clear now, what of that do I own?
Yeah.
And what don't I own? Because I think sometimes an 8 hangs on to a lot of things that they don't own that people put on them. Okay, you're the one who does this, that, or that. And I think we kind of fall into, we tend to, you know, be more strong, more powerful, more angry, more forceful. So I'm trying to get clear about where am I standing for myself in a place of adulthood, you know, not a wounded child, and what of that is right and what of that is just not. What is that kind of ego like, for me, poor me, why is it happening to me? So that is another thing that I think has become more conscious. I've always felt like a victim, but or victimized at times, but I didn't connect that to the personality type before.
Right, and I think it is also part of the sexual that's more in touch with sort of more emotion, is part of that. And I think it's really good the way you're talking about anger, the anger of the 8 so clearly, and sometimes 8s will say, like you're saying too, like anger feels like energy moving through me. But I also think I just want to put in a note of caution for all of us. Sometimes 8s get stereotyped as always being angry or being bad for being angry. And first of all, anger is not bad. It's, you know, those of us who are afraid of anger or have a hard time with anger can sometimes see it that way. But that's us putting a value judgment on it. And I think that anger can be a good thing. You know, it can help create boundaries. It can help communicate important things. However, it is part of the growth path of the 8 to learn how to manage it, but it's also incumbent on the rest of us not to stereotype them as always being angry. Naranjo says something that I really like. He says, you know, sometimes 8s don't need to be angry. And that's partly because they do carry with them a certain power and presence and confidence and certainty that we're kind of talking about here. So Susanna, anything you want to say about any strengths or challenges, growth challenges especially, that you've worked with as an 8?
Yeah, I'm happy that with everything that you've said so far, I can relate definitely. For me, one of the challenges still is, and I'm sure it's a lifelong process, to really access fear. And to sit with that and to acknowledge it and accept it. And it goes hand in hand with being vulnerable, and especially in intimate relationships. Just to acknowledge that there are fears. For me, it's really hard. And fear of betrayal, fear of being vulnerable, fear of loss. You know, it's just even hard to articulate it in this room.
It's so important, yes, that you're saying that. And again, I think it's really important to know it's not that 8s don't have fear. They have fear like all of us do, but a lot of the time it gets denied. It's not conscious. But of course, for all of us, when we have feelings that we don't allow ourselves to express or feel consciously, it gets acted out. And I think sometimes the fear gets acted out as an angry response. But so what you're saying is so important, though, because at a certain point, when an 8's working on themselves, it's so important for them to become conscious of the fear. And like you're saying, even in this moment, even though you've been working to be in touch with it, it's still hard to name in front of people.
Well, yes, because then it throws you into a crisis, identity. Like, then who am I? If I'm fearful, then I need to be strong and I need to be powerful. So am I becoming all mushy? Like, I don't want to be that way. So it's hard.
Yes.
But what has helped me so much is definitely breathing and meditating and practicing gratitude. First thing in the morning, I just have to have my rituals just to keep me centered and to be present to all of the emotions and all of the big spectrum of feelings that I want to access in order to be fully awake, So that's been hard, but also thanks to you, I feel that a big growing edge for me has been accessing my heart and moving to two a lot, and being okay with feeling needed, which I actually never liked. I don't want to be needed. I'm happy to help, but on my own terms. I don't want to know that someone needs me because I run away. But with you, it's different. I feel like I'm able now. I'm definitely growing, so I'm a little confused.
I'm a growth challenge for you, basically. Yes.
I'm
work
confused.
together.
I go to 2 a lot lately, yes. And I used to go to 5 and just retreat and isolate myself when there was a challenge or when there was a request from me. I would just like run away. Yeah. So.
And a strength, I think, for you particularly.
A strength. Well, I feel I am powerful. I think I can get stuff done, but I don't know. I have a big heart. I do. I have a big heart.
People feel that very easily. Yes.
Yeah, and in intimate relationships, I often heard. You know how people sometimes they fear that they're not enough. For me, it was always I was too much, and so I'm always afraid. I always felt that I had to contain myself in order to be fully accepted and loved and and wanted. But no, I feel like now I have someone who's really happy with me expressing myself in every way, and it's very important for me to make space, though, to have room in the relationship and just come back to me and just have my own space.
It sounds like self-acceptance in a way has been an
Self-acceptance and
important
self-compassion
work
have
of
been-
your bigness and your passion and your big heart and
Yeah, I
your
think
fear.
it's true for everyone, right? Whatever type we are.
Of
but
course.
Definitely self-acceptance and self-compassion and self-love. Those have been medicine.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
not always easy to practice it, but
Yeah, beautiful.
yeah.
So I want to go to questions in a moment, but I wonder if each of you could say something brief about subtype, because I know that this is a good experienced panel because all of you have some experience understanding your subtype. So maybe if you could tell us what your subtype is and say just a little bit about how you see that sort of putting a particular flavor on the way 8 expresses itself.
Yes, well, in my case, the one-on-one sexual subtype, I think is very clear even before the type, maybe. I'm all about just making the connection and going deep and I'll say possessing the situation a little bit, even the people.
It's called possession, and it's not just a person, but it's oftentimes the whole the whole atmosphere, the whole situation is a good way to put it. Yeah.
I was reading on your subtype description the other day that the 8, sexual 8, when they go to a party, they think that they're bringing the party. Like nothing has happened until that moment, and it made me laugh. I never really quite thought about that, but yeah.
And you
there's
do bring a certain party atmosphere with you. So yes.
Well, but there has been a lot of unawareness throughout my life, and it's just been recent now that I can embrace this. But so yeah, the possessing, even also with my parents, with my dad, I just always was daddy's girl, even though there was this love and hate relationship, because both we were so strong-minded, but I always, still to this day, I want to be his only love, really.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
And in my teaching partner and I see the sexual subtype, people who are sexual dominant, as having something in childhood around the mother-father-child triangle. That's kind of a formative aspect.
Yeah, I remember when I was going through puberty, I told my mom to promise me that she would never tell my dad that I had become a woman.
Wow.
And I know it's weird, like, don't ever tell dad I got my period, because I don't want him to change his
You still
love
want to
for
be his
me.
little girl?
I want to just
Wow.
maintain that.
Yeah.
To this day, I mean, I'm sure he knows.
Yes. I'm sure he does.
I've never. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jeanette, can you tell us a little bit
I
about
don't
your
know if I could top
subtype?
that one, but I'm a sexual subtype too, and when I learned about the sexual subtype, I think the 8 became. I mean, I never doubted I was an 8, but there were things about it that didn't resonate with me, and I've talked about them before. So this kind of possessiveness, it's a little bit different. I have a social repressed, so there's a sequencing of the subtypes, which means I don't want to be the life of the party, but I want to be the center of anything I'm in, and usually I like the small. So if you're my friend, you're gonna be. I want to be your best friend. And when I hear my friends talking about their other best friends, it really bothers me. And I'm like, what can I do to be their best friend? What are they really? So it's this. There's something about it that is, in some ways, I guess positive, because I get really close to people and people get really close to me. But then there's always this loneliness. There's something about loneliness about that, because you're never going to be everything to everybody. And it's not like I'm trying to change myself to be that, but I want to be that. So, and the emotionality, like if I was sad, I'd watch. I'm not much of a crier, but I'd watch every sad movie because I wanted to be the saddest that I could be.
Right.
And that's where I thought I was the 4, like why I wanted to feel every emotion.
And the sexual 8 is the most emotional 8. They have
Yeah.
easier access to emotion, cry more easily.
Yeah, I wanted to be the deepest and different. And I think that's the sexual part of the 8.
And you also hear the lust in what she's talking about. I wanted to be your best friend. I wanted to be really sad or watch all these movies, because it's like you go big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think impersonal, but mostly in intimate relationships, it could be quite unproductive, right? Because you have this passion. I remember always telling my boyfriends, like, you like the passionate side, well, you're gonna have to get the other side, which is the angry fierceness, so that would be very volatile, could be super volatile until you get mature enough to do that. And so I think there's a lot of volunteer, and there's a lot of magnetism there where, people were like obsessed. No, not that they was stalking me or anything, but I mean, they were really very into the relationship to the point, and I seeded that. I wanted that, and to the point where I think the relationships don't mature, right? You have to have the everyday for a long time. I mean, I'm like in relationships for years, but I'm married now, and we've been together maybe 15 or 16 years, as long as relationship. Because I'm like, most days, like, really, if that's what you want to do, I'm out of here. That would be my response. I don't want to do that, and I move on to the next thing because there's always something better. It's not enough, and that's part of the 8. And then I think you put the sexual part of it. It's just like someone does something for you, but you didn't do that too. So so there's a lot of kind of energy around it being enough.
It's like the 2 energies together. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So now, social subtype.
Social subtype. Very strong self-pres behind that, but social subtype. So when I showed up here, it's like a room full of people. This is great. I'm going to make new friends today. In fact, when I was driving here, there was somebody unloading their kayak, but I wanted to get here early. And I said, I should help him with his kayak. So I don't think, like when people are waiting at bus stops and I'm driving past, I'll check my time and see if I have time to offer them a ride to like wherever they're going. I actually know the name of everybody in my local Target who works like the 6 to like 10 shift, which is when I shop. And when we made Christmas cookies, I actually was able to write out like all our FedEx office people. I was like, I knew all their names, and I made that whole thing. So I think of the whole world as like, people are either my friends or they're going to be my friends, and I'm sure of it. In fact, I really wanted to, I saw this thing, the Facebook carousel ads when you get these suggestions, and there was a snorkeling with manatees trip. And just by chance, a bunch of friends of mine and I and all of our spouses are going to Croatia together. So we're all gearing up for that soon. But I really want to get in this manatee trip. And it couldn't work out with some of my friends' schedules. And I reached out to the person. I was like, it's totally cool if I come like solo. And she's like, yeah, totally fine. So already, like it's a few weeks before the trip, 6 people are like planning on visiting me like at the end of the year in Northern California. I've never even met them yet. So it gives me tremendous security. The word pack, the word I feel like when I'm in a herd of horses or my pack of dogs, I feel, as long as they're behaving, I feel really soothed. And when I work, if my team's all busy, that's really hard for me, especially as an extrovert. Is that I'm a manager of a large department, and I need to make sure my employees are productive too. So I actually remove myself and I'm adjacent to them, but away, because otherwise I just would want to talk with them all day and find out like what they did over the weekend and really get how their relationships are going. So I also go down to the lobby area. We have a beautiful lobby and plants and everything like that. And just having the din of people around me is very soothing.
Yeah.
Very soothing.
The social aid is a lot about friendship and protection, and it tends to be a mellower, friendly eight. They don't always lead with a sense of toughness. It's more like they lead with support. They like mentoring people.
Yes.
It's a lot about how do I help everybody else get along really well.
Yeah. In fact, I created a couple of mentoring programs at my job, and especially for disadvantaged or people who come from underserved communities who are starting their careers, and that was really exciting. So very much groups and teams, and every time I have a challenge, think, oh, let me see who else wants to join me or who else may want to do this. So that's very important to me.
Thank you.
All right.
Beautiful. Very clear.
Well, I must be an exception as a as a social aid, because I don't have a wide circle of friends. I don't look for new friends every place I go. But where it does show up for me is in groups, classes, or any sorts of groups where I seem to be one of the few in the room who's able to see who isn't being served. That somebody says something, maybe a leader says something that I say, but wait, what about those people? That kind of leaves them out, and I wouldn't have said it that way, and
You're sensitive to how people get impacted, especially in groups.
not just everybody. It's like, and it's like somebody's being overlooked. I know it, like instinctually. It's not it's not something I have to think about, and it surprises me that leaders, teachers, etc. That doesn't come natural to everybody. This is one of the surprising things about the Enneagram is everybody's not like me.
Right.
What a concept.
Beautiful.
So I guess that's all I have to say about
Thank you so
social.
much, Don. Well, thank you so much for all of you. This was so enlightening. I want to get a few questions from the audience, but first I'd like to ask our host, Michael Lerner, if he has any comments or questions for the panel. He's got it, yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the panel. This is the first panel of Enneagram I've ever heard. And so I've immersed myself in the literature for 3 years, but it is so different to have this experience. So the learning for me of this first panel is just extraordinary. The second thing, I reflect on myself as a 5, and Beatrice, you immediately said social 5, and that, I'm still working on this, and you may be able to help me because in my work life, I'm clearly a social 5. But in my inner life, and people at Commonweal know this, I very much focus on one-to-one relationships. And if you were to ask me what gives me the energy and courage to do my work, it's one-to-one relationships. So Commonweal is a kind of a manifestation of an 8, of a social 5 energy.
Right.
And there are many aspects I deeply, deeply connect to the social 5, but there's also this very powerful one-on-one. So I still don't know how the stack really works, whether it's social on top, one-to-one second, and self-pres third. Clearly self-pres is third. But now you've said in your book that 5s, their different types are quite monochrome in that they are like each other,
Especially from the outside.
especially from the outside. So, but here's the place, when you talk about going to 8, when I read in other people's work that I go to 8 in the heart space, that made all the sense in the world to me, because when I listened to the 8 panel, I have so many of those qualities. It's just that I don't do anger, you know, and that, and I don't do, I'm not in it for myself, you know, as a 5. So it's not that I have a lust to, you know, I mean, I may have lust, but my lust is for knowledge, as you know, that's what 5s do. But I really believe that it's the access to the 8 that enables me to do Commonweal.
Yes.
And so what I'm a little confused about is when I read that as I go to 8 in the heart space, and also when I read that as a 5, if I'm reasonably evolved, that I pick up the high side of 8, right? Then when I read you saying, I go to 8 in the child heart space, which is about unresolved issues from childhood, and I think, okay, maybe, but why is it that going to 8 seems to me like such an extraordinary source of resources for my work, as opposed to a regressive return to a child heart? So that's my question for you.
I think it's both. Like for all of us, we can slide to that arrow against point unconsciously and kind of act out stuff maybe we haven't resolved. But I also think it's a way we naturally go to accomplish certain things in our life. And again, I think if you're working on yourself at all, you often will go to the higher side of that point, almost just as a way of expressing yourself in the world, a way of being in the world. And 5s will have access to 8 in a certain kind of way. It's not like you turn into an 8.
No.
It's like you get access. And I think Commonweal is such a great example of a 5 and maybe a social 5, because it's such a beautiful cause or set of causes, and manifesting it, making it happen. You know, 8s are so good at, we heard it so beautifully from our panel. They can make things happen, and you can put anything in front of them, whether you say it can't be done or you just challenge them to do it, they will find a way to make it happen. And I think Commonweal has such a big vision, and it does so much, and you've made it happen. Right, so I think it's a nice example potentially, and again, sometimes I think we find our story in the Enneagram. You know, some people will say, "Well, I relate to this type, but I don't relate completely." Part of it is finding yourself in it. You know, the model is an archetype, and so it'll be like, okay, your story could be one of maybe a social 5, maybe there's some one-to-one in there as well. Maybe that you use that in terms of making particular relationships that have helped this happen, but also a kind of energy inside that, again, all of these energies want to be expressed, of having this vision, having the knowledge, doing the research and whatever else it takes that you do as a 5, but also having this energy, this access to this big energy that we're hearing about making something happen and rising to a challenge. And especially even, I mean, the social 5 might make a little bit more sense because it's also kind of a social 8
Yep.
thing to create this sort of
Right.
community.
So
that
is it true
helps.
that in order to determine your subtype, if it's not clear how the stack works, social or one-to-one on top, that it's helpful to go look at where the arrows go and see?
Yes.
Because is it true that whether you're social, sexual, or self-pres, that will also manifest in your 2 other points, and therefore that's a way to
Usually,
differentiate?
yeah, your dominant instinct stays with you when you slide to the other points. All other things being equal, at least this is my theory.
Yeah.
If, for instance, you had a parent that was maybe maybe your parent was if you had a sexual 8 parent, maybe that makes you slide a little bit more in that direction. But my theory is that the instinct is a powerful influence.
I see.
But I think there could be that story that there's a social 8 thing going on plus a social 5 thing. And I like that you're saying that you related to some of what you heard, although
Deeply.
what that brings up is the issue of levels of awareness.
Exactly.
So there is this vertical dimension,
Right.
and so I mean, one of the nice things about panels, and what's great about having really good panelists is you have people who've done enough work that they can speak to both sort of the more fixated patterns and the growth path and the larger awarenesses of those patterns. I think it's important to remember there are some people who will have done work on themselves that are very healthy 8 is there's so much that's beautiful
Right.
about what that person brings to the world, and then there's the unhealthy levels. And so when a person is just more focused on their own ego needs, and I've done the Divine Comedy in the Enneagram, and one of the definitions of Dante's Inferno, metaphorically, is being very focused on your own ego and
Yeah.
not having a larger sense
Yeah.
of things beyond.
Yeah.
So we can just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's turn to the audience.
Yes, I'd love.
Yeah.
Marty.
So there's a third subgroup, if I'm understanding correctly, the
Oh, yeah,
self-preservation
self-preservation,
one, which
8.
is not represented by
Yes.
this panel. Can you speak?
Yeah, I'll say a very
Could you
short,
speak a
and then
little bit about
yeah,
this?
and then I'll have Connie say a little bit because I know she relates to self-pres. So self-pres 8, a little bit of an 8 that's a little more focused on material security. Not so much of a big energy, tends to be a little bit more introverted, a little bit more 5-ish 8, a little bit more focused on a smaller sphere, but also very focused on getting needs met and getting needs met directly and efficiently and quickly, and not a lot of fuss, not having to communicate with a lot of people or get anyone's permission. A little very direct, knows how to barter and bargain and get a good deal. May have abundance in their life, but still a little bit worried about if there's enough in the bank or if they're going to be okay. So a little bit less focus on power or on protection or on supporting others, a little bit more on a smaller sphere of control that's around survival and satisfaction of needs and material security. So Connie, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I had shared the fire extinguisher example. I literally have fire extinguishers mounted in every room of the house. And when I was 5, our neighbor downstairs, we lived in an apartment building, fell asleep with a cigarette. And on Christmas Eve, we had to be spirited out and when the building was on fire. So I think that is a practical solution to make sure that my family's never in that. But even, so I have everything that I think about, I want to have everything all set. So for camping, I'm definitely the person who go camping with. I had 6 coolers. We had all the meals planned out. And I have a particular thing around warmth and food. So I never had any kind of eating disorder except loving to eat all the time. But I literally, for the ride here from San Mateo to here, I have nuts. I have oranges, and the oranges are cut so I could drive with them. I made sure I had plenty of ice cubes for my water so it could last until the very end of this panel, and I'm doing pretty good. And the only thing where I'm a little bit, I just make sure I have enough in the bank so I never bounce anything, but I just don't have the time to fuss over that. So, but I got my whole circle of very close friends, like my best friend and spouses. We're in literally a weekly discussion of where, and retirement for me is a ways off, but where exactly we want to retire. And in fact, we've been able to have these discussions so much that we've narrowed down the 4 top places that we're going to retire together. So I not only set up, and I attune to my social nature because we're going to all retire in the same place together. So I'll have my best friends and their husbands, who I love too, all together, and we'll be all. So I have a little bit of a myth that I acknowledge that everything will be okay and we'll be all set. I have my own blanket for the airline because I may be cold and that will be uncomfortable. So that's definitely something. So making sure there's enough. I worry about I host very large events in my company, and at the end of it, I literally will stand by, and everyone finds it cute and amusing and all that. I'm like, oh God, I'm really worked up about this. And there'll be leftover food. And I'll literally direct people to say, please take food home. And I'll have takeout containers because I just want to make sure that everybody's going to be okay. And that's so that there's gets to be a blend of the social and the aid protection and just wanting to make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah, and we can really hear the sequence there, the social and the self-pres, but that's a great way.
Yeah.
Again, and it's important not to get too hung up on just the instinct, that instinct that all self-preservation dominants are worried about having enough. That can be true, but it changes a little bit from type to type. So just as a cautionary thing, but I think
Right,
you're
in
expressing
my
it very
case,
clearly.
yeah.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
I really appreciate the panel, so thank you all. I learned the Enneagram in this format in the 80s, and I've missed it. And
Yes.
so it's been really refreshing, and I'm focused on Connie right now because your family are nines, if I heard you correctly?
Yeah, my wife and my son, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a self-pres 9, and I was thinking of the wing, that the attraction, because it's counterintuitive that a 9 and an 8 would draw together, given the 9's underdoing the energy. But then I can see the attraction because of the vitality that the 8 brings to the party, so to speak. So I don't know whether you'll address relationship connections or.
Right. Yeah, I do think 8s and 9s come together quite a bit, and self-pres 9 is the most 8ish 9,
Well, now
interestingly.
I'm thinking my husband's an 8, and I
Yes.
hadn't before
Interesting,
at all
interesting.
until listening. to
So
this
anything
panel.
you want to say quickly, Connie, about what it's like to be in a relationship with a 9?
It could. So I have 9s who are friends, and I find them extremely. If there's three types that I automatically attune to, I feel are 9s, 2s, and 4s. 4s, I love the emotional complexity. It's something for me to have vitality through that emotional complexity. 2s, I just automatically always adore, and that's the best way for me to say it. And then 9s are easy for me. I feel like I could just relax a bit, and it's helpful because it's like a pacing. My wife and I could have a lot of bickering and a lot of struggle because she doesn't. I'm very forthright. I'm very this is this. I'm very definite, and I don't want to. I want her to have her own life too. But I think where we kind of came together is she's so caring and so much into how can I support other people that I felt like I could, in addition to other factors, a lot of mutual interest, really strong family values. I felt like I could, it was a good match in that way.
That's great.
Just that caring. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all.
Okay.
Are you going to talk about the arrow thing with the points?
I can going forward. Yeah, I'll just briefly state it before we end since there's some interest there. So 8s go to 5 and 2. So we've heard some of the panelists bring this up. So for 8s, 2 is the security point. So that's a point against. So that's sort of sometimes what had to be left behind in childhood is a little bit more neediness, being vulnerable, being sort of the sweet, helpful one. They had to kind of be strong. They didn't have the luxury for that. And then the stress point is 5. So sometimes 5 for 8s can look like a little bit like a bunker mentality, like, okay, I'm going to withdraw and kind of reconnoiter and get my resources to go back out and deal with what's stressful. Or like what Jeanette was saying, like I'm going to get really rational. I'm going to really give you point by point. And so that's the stress. But the 2, they can both really work as balancing points. 2, because it helps the 8 go into their heart more, get more soft, draw on that part of themselves that is very sensitive, but that they don't always show, get more, allow themselves to be more in touch with emotion, connect more with people, learn to be more approachable, smile more, like Jeanette got the feedback in the performance review. And then again, that helps them be more in their heart. It helps them be softer. And then that manages, then they can bring that to the move to 5, where when they're using it in a conscious way, it can be a little bit more like not acting so quickly, slowing down to think things through more deeply, maybe get more research before they take action, because there can be this temptation to be more impulsive, more excessive. Fives are more minimalistic, and what's the minimum required for this, and sort of a little bit more withdrawn, taking more space for themselves, sort of allowing for more depth within themselves before they kind of go out and do something in the world or make something happen. And sometimes they're giving a lot of themselves. Eights are. We can hear it when they're talking about. They're like they've got this great energy, but they're very generous. And I think sometimes five helps them kind of get two and five helps them focus a little more on self-care, because remember, 8 is also the core, it's part of the triad of self-forgetting. So when 8s are working so hard in the world and meeting challenges, sometimes that their own well-being can get lost. They may not, and again, it's part of not being in touch with vulnerability. So they can sometimes not always recognize that they need more just downtime or something like that. And sometimes going to 5 gives them a larger perspective.
Thank you, Beatrice.
And unfortunately, we do have to stop there.